you're not saying anything is consent. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are really excited today to be joined by our mining chair, Dave Bluin, who's going to give us an update about some of the proposed mines in the state that we are working on. So thank you for joining us. If you join us regularly, we are actually switching, and you will now be able to see videos about our issues for updates every Thursday. With that, I will hand it over to you, Dave, to take it away.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. So I am going to try to go relatively quickly over all the developments. This is, as everybody knows, this is a pretty huge topic, so it's not the easiest thing to do in a quick manner. But let me just start by talking about the John Muir chapter's policy on mining. We're not opposed to all metallic mining in Wisconsin, but the socioeconomic and environmental impacts from these proposals have tended to be disproportionately concentrated in rural northern Wisconsin. And whether underground or open pit, this kind of metallic mining can be, of the largest industrial proposals in terms of land destruction and habitat loss in the state. And our northern counties have significant wetlands and ground and surface waters that make destructive metallic mining even more problematic. Add in the air impacts from processing and fugitive waste dust, the huge quantities of wastewater discharge and permanent storage of reactive mine wastes in tailings dumps that measure in hundreds of acres, and you can see why this has remained a priority issue for the chapter. We've been really active in working on these proposals since the 1990s, including working to challenge the Flambeau Mines closure plans, and we were part of the huge statewide grassroots coalition that successfully halted the destructive Crandon proposal. We fought to ban cyanide for use in mining. We lost on that one, but we fought and won to enact the Prove It First law, commonly known as the Moratorium Law. But of course, since 2010 and the GOP takeover of state government, a number of deregulation bills have passed, and so we're facing a number of new unwelcome developments. We have a ton of background information on the environmental impacts and socioeconomic impacts of mining on the chapter website. Just go to our issue page to get at that. So I'm going to concentrate on the metallic sulfide mining developments in the state right now. These are the base and precious metal proposals, or base and precious metal deposits that are here in the state that we know about that companies have shown interest. Due to time limits, I'm only going to briefly mention the Pinocchio Hills Gogebic taconite proposal up in Ashland and Iron counties. GTAC, of course, has left the state. The proposal is defunct. But the owners of the land and the minerals are still poking around up there. They're still actively trying to influence local government officials in case they're able to attract another company to come back with a proposal. So unfortunately, that issue remains dormant, but it still remains an issue. So there's about 15 identified mineral occurrences or minor deposits that have been identified in northern Wisconsin. Only one has been successfully mined so far. That's Flambeau. There are 3 more economic deposits in the state, one of which is Crandon, which of course is defunct and hopefully will never be developed. There's a couple more, abandoned Reef, that we'll talk about, as well as the Lynn deposit in Oneida County. But overarching in all of this is Aquila's Back 40 proposal up in the UP, along just over the border alongside the Menominee River. And this Aquila's Back 40 development and proposal there has pretty big implications for what happens in Wisconsin in the next few years. That mine is in advanced permitting currently. Aquila has most permits in hand, but there's still a couple outstanding. First, the wetlands destruction permit, as I call it, was subject to a contested case hearing held last year, and the decision is not back in yet from the administrative law judge in Michigan who's reviewing that case. The other is the dam safety permit. So Aquila proposed an unsafe dam for the site and then withdrew that permit application for revisions last year. They have yet to resubmit it. And this is important because when that dam safety permit comes back up for hearing, it's a complete reset. It's a complete new application. So there will be a new round of permitting as well as public hearings, which gives the public another shot at reviewing that proposal. Also importantly about Back 40, which is sort of on the good news side, if you will, is that the River Conservation Group American Rivers designated the Menominee River one of America's most endangered rivers. That was announced this spring in February. And that was based on the risk to the Menominee River from the wastewater discharge that's proposed, the tailings dam and wastes that are stored very close to the river, the cyanide that's being proposed to be used in the gold processing cycle there, as well as the open pit, which is all of about 150 feet from the edge of the Menominee River. But that is drawing important attention as well to Aquila's proposal up there. But the reason I mentioned that what Aquila is doing with Back 40 has implications for Wisconsin is that Aquila has stated that its assets in Wisconsin, the Reef deposit in Marathon County, the Bend deposit in Taylor County, if permitted, the ore from those deposits could be mined, shipped, and processed at the Back 40 plant. The reason for this is that those deposits are not especially large, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail shortly. But they've proposed that because those deposits are not quite big enough to justify their own processing plant and as well permitting for dumping wastes at the site. So it could turn out that that it's simply cheaper for them to ship to the Back 40 site and have that ore processed up there. That is also a concern for the folks that are fighting the Back 40 project because as proposed right now, Back 40 is a open pit, I believe for about up to 16 years of mining. And that's what they're telling the public, but what they're telling their investors is that they have discovered additional ore at the site that could add a significant expansion at Back 40, adding years of mining and increasing the wastes by unknown amounts. So add to the fact that one, there is potential expansion at Back 40 itself that is not being accounted for in the current round of permitting, and as well mining in Wisconsin that could happen if Back 40 is permitted. All the more reason for those of us on this side of the Menominee River to pay attention to Back 40 permitting and to continue to oppose it. So just briefly about the 3 deposits in Wisconsin and the most recent exploration going on, and I see we're kind of running short on time. Aquila controls a small gold deposit called Reef in the town of Easton in Marathon County. This is east of Wausau. It's a series of small but moderately rich gold deposits. About 500,000 tons of total ore, definitely way too small to have its own processing on site, but rich enough that it could likely be mined there and then shipped off site for processing. Aquila controls that deposit, and they last drilled exploration boreholes there in 2012. The other deposit that Aquila controls is the Bend deposit in Taylor County. This is on public land. It's on the Nicolet-Chequamegon National Forest, and the Bureau of Land Management controls most of the surface and minerals there, with some of it being held by private owners. The deposit is between 3 and 4 million tons of primarily copper and gold. Gold prices would have to stay pretty high for this thing to be justified for mining. Especially because it would be an underground project. Underground mines are much more expensive to mine and operate than open pit mines. That's based on the shape and the near vertical tilt of the deposit there. For comparison, Flambeau, was about half the size of Bend, about 2 million tons, but was a far richer deposit. So again, Aquila did the same thing with Bend that they did at Reef. They last drilled exploration holes in 2012. One thing about Bend is that Aquila has outstanding applications in right now with the Bureau of Land Management for additional exploration drilling there. The Forest Service expects to hear sometime this year yet whether those applications are approved. So there may be additional exploration going on in Taylor County soon. The Lynn deposit, we worked hard to, with allies in Oneida County, especially the local Protect the Willow River group, to oppose a non-binding referendum to lease and develop Lynn. That was on the ballot in 2018. And we're counting that as a huge success because county voters strongly rejected the referendum to lease and develop Lynn. Lynn is interesting also because it's this is a little bit bigger deposit, between 5 and 5.5 million tons, mostly zinc, but with silver, gold, copper, and lead. But it sits on county forest land. So again, this is on basically public land, and county voters in Oneida County have a lot to say about whether that's developed or not. So finally, I know that folks want to hear about Badger. Badger Minerals is the latest development going on in the state. Actually came and went already in a sense. So the background on this is that we first learned about Badger Minerals in January. It was a new exploration company that filed a notice of intent to explore what's called the Wolf River deposit. Really, it's a series of small deposits separated from each other in southeast Oneida County. I can't show you the location because I can't bring up the map, but what's important here is that it's alongside Stockley Creek, which is a tributary of the Wolf River. If you drive straight east out of Monaco on Highway 8 about 1.5 miles and hit Browns Road, take a right and go down about 1.5 miles, 2 miles, you'll be sitting right in the middle of the area where they did exploration drilling just recently. So Badger was founded by a couple of Canadian mining company executives and a geologist named Tom Quigley. And for those who are familiar with Tom, or not familiar with Tom Quigley, Tom Quigley discovered the Back 40 deposit more than a decade ago, and he founded Aquila Resources, and has since apparently sold off his control of Aquila to Canadian investors. Since then, he started this new company, Badger, a subsidiary of a Canadian company called Can America Minerals, which is based in Thunder Bay, Ontario. So Badger got state and county exploration licenses in February, and notably, neither of those licenses require any kind of public input or public hearings, or they're simply apply for, meet all the requirements, check off all the boxes, and pay your fee and get your insurance, and you get a license. So DNR gave them approval, the county gave them approval, and then they drilled a total of 6, and it might be 7 holes. There's a little confusion about how many holes they actually drilled, beginning at the end of June through mid-July. So this was in what's known as the Wolf River Prospect. Noranda drilled there in the 1970s. They put in about 24, maybe 30 exploration drill holes, and it hadn't been touched since. And it's always been considered non-economic, meaning it just didn't meet the grade for potential development. But for whatever reason, Badger has gone on to do the drilling that they just finished up on. In terms of the impacts at the site, the drill pad sites were pretty small, measured in the hundreds of feet each, and Badger worked really hard to keep the total disturbed area for all of the drill pads there under 1 acre. And the reason they did that was to avoid having to get a stormwater permit, something that would have triggered additional scrutiny by DNR and has potential challenges by the public and by the regulators. In fact, at every step, Badger has so far avoided any permitting effort that would have allowed or required public comment and or challenges. So, excuse me. The other controversies so far have been that some of the drilling at the site took place on managed forest land that's controlled by an out-of-state logging company. Some of the drilling was on private land that Badger Minerals actually acquired, bought from property owners there, a couple of 40-acre sites. The reason this is controversial is that mining is prohibited on managed forest land, but mining exploration is allowed under state law, which, you know, that is obviously rather contradictory, and that contradiction was something that many people pointed out to the DNR. Not that they did anything about it, but the other controversy is simply its location next to a tributary of the Wolf River, which is not only an outstanding resource water, but home to wild rice beds important to both the Mole Lake Secaucus Chippewa and the Menominee tribes. So as you would expect, the tribes are naturally upset about this and are taking very seriously the threat that this represents to them. So then finally, you know, I think the last word on this, on Badger, is to keep in mind is that, you know, exploration itself is not super invasive. The sites have to be reclaimed. The boreholes have to be abandoned. We'll follow up and make sure that we watch for those reports. And exploration, you know, rarely leads to a full mining permit application, you know, in a full mining project. But again, this bears, you know, paying close attention to. You know, previous drilling at the site by Noranda, you know, the only thing that came out of that was that this deposit had always been called subeconomic. It simply wasn't worthwhile for potential mining. So, but of course, we don't know the results of Badger's exploration program here. And then even a full permit application for a, you know, for a mining permit would take much more additional drilling and environmental studies at the site, well in advance of an actual mining permit application coming in. So we would get and see, you know, a lot of notice long before a permit comes up. So what's next for all of this stuff? I'm thinking of the things that folks might pay attention to, and you know, to give us a chance to stay on top of this as the public. The hearings on Aquila's dam safety permit. Once that permit application comes in, again, that process restarts, and there will be a public comment period and potential public challenges to the revised dam design when that moves forward. Stay tuned. We will try to let you know as soon as we know. Anybody who's still making or thinking about making comments for the governor's climate change task force hearings, I know there's 2 more hearings, one tomorrow and one next week. If you feel up to it, you can comment on the fact that, you know, destructive metallic sulfide mining in the state is extremely energy intensive. The mining process itself, you know, just getting the ore out of the ground, processing of the ore is extremely energy intensive, as well as the transportation and shipping of the ore. You know, plus the fact that there is significant habitat loss from every one of these mines when they go in. So habitat and forests that could be capturing carbon. And again, like I said, with Badger, we will pay close attention to that. But for now, Badger Minerals, actually their exploration license expired on June 30th. As far as we know, they have not reapplied for an exploration license. So that work for the moment is done, other than the requirement that Badger safely reclaim the sites, the drill pad sites, as well as abandon the boreholes themselves, according to state law. Oh, and the other thing, and I don't know what the public component of this will be or when it will be exactly yet, but as a result of Act 134, 2017 Act 134, that repealed the Prove It First law, along with that part of the law came a number of changes to the mining law. and those changes were enacted under statute, but the second part of that is that administrative rules are being written to administer the law itself, and those rules are still being written, and they are not ready to be offered to the public as drafts, and with the potential public hearings, likely public hearings that come with them. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. And that's all I had.
Great, thanks, Dave. We do have some questions already in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. The first question, so you mentioned the Ben deposit is on the Shawamgan-Nicolay forest land. And are there any extra protections that offers in order to not allow mining there?
Sure. So the good thing, it's sort of a good news, bad news answer to this one. So the good news is that because it's on public land, it's the federal government that administers the primary permit applications, and so at a minimum we'll see, and I should add to that that at the same time the state rules still apply as well. So we could have dual permitting processes, something that we saw at Crandon, where the federal government was running its, the Corps of Engineers was running its own, regulatory program, or regulatory program for the mine. So in this case, it would be the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, and running their process as well as the state. So it gives us additional public input. It gives us additional legal hooks. It could be that the two processes result in a much more robust review approach to the proposal. Should it get proposed to be mined? Currently there is no mine proposal for it. We just know that we have a deposit with an active company that's interested. Oh, and sorry, the bad news on that, Trump administration gutting federal regulations. So we'll see how that goes.
Great, thank you. The other question for the Badger minerals on the Wolf River, is that reservation land?
It is not, and again, apologies that I couldn't share my screen with you because I had a map set to show you that. Where Badger drilled was about, I should have measured this, it's about 4 miles almost directly west of the Mole Lake Reservation. So it's not on tribal land. It is upstream of where Mole Lake's water resources, Rice Lake and Swamp Creek, reach the Wolf River. I don't know how, if anybody knows that geography or not. But what is important is that this is in the ceded territory for the Chippewa, which include the Mole Lake Sakagan, where they reserve rights to, hunt, harvest, and fish. And that includes the wild rice beds on the Wolf River. The Menominee also, look at those wild rice beds as, an important cultural, as well as food resource for them to this day. So the same for the Sakagans. So that, on top of the fact that the Wolf River in that stretch is an outstanding resource water, means that there's a lot of protections in place, as well as a lot of built-in opposition ready to go to work on it.
Great. And as always, as a reminder, if you're watching on Facebook, in the comment below, or on YouTube in the comments, we will have links to a lot of the sites and maps and things that Dave mentioned. Another question, Dave, how long are exploratory permits good for?
So they're generally only annual, and the way they're structured is that, I think in the code, in the administrative rules for them, actually, is that they all expire. Anybody who holds one, they always expire on June 30th of the year, and they're only held for 1 year. In the case of Badger, they didn't even apply for an exploration license until early February. And after sort of a pro forma review, again, anybody can get an exploration license. It's pretty simple. You don't have to even have a plan. You just say you're a company who wants to get one. If you pay your money, and I believe you have to take out a really basic insurance policy, it must be like $5,000 or something. You can get a license, but they do end on June 30th. And like I said, Badgers has expired as of now. We don't know yet whether they have applied for a renewal. But that's a simple fee. I want to say it's $150 or something. So it's a pretty simple process for them.
Great. And last question, though, last call. If people want to put questions in the chat. I heard there's a panel series going on. Can you talk more about that and when they are?
Okay. So actually, I need to just pull this up. Hopefully, I didn't lose you.
We're still here. You didn't lose us.
Yeah, and did we post it on the chapter website?
We did, and we will also put links for everything that we're talking about, including the panel series below.
Yeah, so one of the things that the chapter is participating in is kind of a working group or a working coalition of organizations and tribes that are trying to pay very close attention to Badger. And in working up that, this working coalition, there is a new website for, just this proposal. It's wolfriveractioncommittee.com. So that's Wolf River. This is all one long word, wolfriveractioncommittee.com. And so the information on this panel series and more background on Badger and the site, including some site maps, are up on there. But there's been a 4-part virtual panel series that's been going on. 2 of the panel events have already taken place. One on tribal histories, one on tribal allies that was held last night. And then another one coming up on July 21st, just on mining and the environment. And I'll be on that panel. And then a 4th panel, regulatory mining process, on August 4th. And these are just 1-hour-long series, similar to what we're doing today, where panelists just give background and information and take questions, with Q&A on it. So, like I say, the one I'm on is coming up on July 21st. Each of these is from 6:30 to 7:30. But if you log into wolfriveractioncommittee.com, there's a link, and I think these recordings are up on a separate Facebook page. So if you're interested, both the tribal histories, the 2 that have already taken place, were fantastic. One on tribal histories and another on tribal allies. It just gives such great background. I can't recommend them more. Not sure how the next one will go, but since I'm on it, but we'll see.
Great. And we did get one other question. What are the county mining fees?
Good one. So the county, let's see, so this is the most recent example of this was Oneida County's, I think it's their Land and Conservation Committee. They're the ones who administered the Badger Minerals license. And I don't know that there was a fee. I'd have to look up in the ordinance again. I'm not sure that there was a fee. I think it was simply an application, and again, check off all the boxes. And if it was a fee at all, it probably wasn't more than $100 or something. It was minimal. The other thing that was important about what the Land and Conservation Committee did, and this is just what Oneida did when they rewrote their mining ordinance in 2018, is that they built in a process that essentially rubber stamps the permit. Again, if you check off the boxes, if you meet the requirements, you get the license, and there is no public component to it. They basically approved the license and then they took public comment. And for the folks that worked hard in Oneida County, just to keep destructive mining out, this was a really disappointing thing, and it pointed out a serious shortcoming in the ordinance. So I know folks up there are paying attention to it and thinking about how they can modify the ordinance in the future.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As a reminder, look below and we'll put links to all of the stuff Dave mentioned, including recordings of the past panels and the upcoming one if you want to learn more. And please stay tuned for more information.